Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. You are tuned into another episode of Leica Stories, and today we are in conversation with Justin Bell, former race car driver. Now he's a much better on-air host than I am. So we'll kick it off right there. Justin, what's going on, man?
Well, hey, first of all, nice to meet you, Derek. I watched your videos. I know you watched mine. It's a little bit of modern day stalking, but I don't know about being better than you, but I talk about different stuff. But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a real treat.
No, a pleasure to have you. And I want to send a huge thank you to the team at Leica for making this happen. And of course, sponsoring this event. Richard, a special thank you to you out there. I know you're watching or listening right now. So Justin,
and he's my sort of secret hookup, you know, like he's like my drug dealer.
He's the guy he's the go-to guy.
He's my drug dealer. And it's the funniest story, just for anyone. It's just the way the world works. His mother lives in the same place in Boca Raton as my dad does. And, you know, my dad's talking to Richard sometime. They just met walking outside, and he says he's with Leica. My dad said, "Oh, my son, Justin, he loves Leica." That's about as far as my dad's knowledge goes. And he said, "You two should talk." So that was the start of an expensive friendship.
I love how you throw the word in there, expensive friendship, but a wonderful friendship. It's funny because Richard and I we're talking, and it's like, you know, we talk about who do we want to interview? Who do we want to hear from? Who's doing things out there in the world of photography that people should take notice of? And your name obviously came up, and we're looking at, you know, your work. And Richard at this point doesn't even know that I'm a car guy. Used to work in the body shop world, and my former boss, huge guy, you know, into racing. He was a race car driver. He's got Nürburgring and everything, like the outline of the track up on the wall, and just obsessed. So I look at your work and I'm like, I get a couple photos in, Justin. I'm like, gotta have him, make it happen.
Oh, thank you. And there were pictures of our McLaren on your wall where you used to work. That was bizarre.
Well, it's funny because I'm
right there, the yellow one, right?
Is that it right there?
Yeah.
That's funny. It's like all along all these years I'm working with your McLaren up on the wall and didn't even know it. And for all of you out there listening, you know, my old boss has all these artist renderings of these famous vehicles, and Justin's was up on the wall this time. So it's like manifest destiny that we're talking right now, right?
Totally. And I think that's what I guess the whole point of us talking today is. It's like how worlds converge that you didn't really know, you know, had any point of reference. You know, for me with my racing, I just was doing racing, and the photography side of things didn't really come up. Am I asking your question for you? Anyway, why don't you ask me a question?
Well, you know what? I want to start back before the racing, before the photography. You were kind of interested in art from a young age, right? You had racing in the blood, but art struck a chord with you from a young age, right?
Yeah, it did. I was sort of that kid that liked to draw and paint, and I had a studio, like a room above the garage where I'd go and, you know, go up there. And as I got into my mid-teens, trying to convince, you know, school friends of mine, girlfriends of mine to come and pose for life drawing. Needless to say, most of the time it was me on my own, but it was, you know, it was so fun. It was a really big part of my childhood. But at the same time, I was racing motorbikes. And so I was racing motocross. So I had this duality to things that didn't always mesh that well. And my dad, you know, was a pretty well-known race car driver. So he was always off doing his thing, or I was going to races with him. So I don't think he quite understood the art side of things. He'd be like, "Come back down and wash the cars." And I'd be like, "Oh, Dad, I'm just, you know, airbrushing." But I did, when I was 18, I realized I wanted to race cars. So I said, "Dad, I really want to try it." And he was like, "God, how do we tell you, Mom?" But the deal was that I went to art college. So I headed to art college rather reluctantly, with a very pathetic portfolio that just squeezed in, but it was a local college, and somehow I got in. And the first semester was, Wednesdays were our only real art day, and, you know, full day of lectures. And I really, at the same time, it was when Brands Hatch, the little racetrack, the big racetrack actually, they had open testing. So I was struggling to make my lectures because of this bloody testing. And at the end of the first semester, just before Christmas, the tutor called me in and said, you are taking someone more deserving's place. You've got to you're going to get thrown out. And I went, hand on heart, I promise I'll work harder when I come back. That's all I want to do, is be a related artist. Because it was a bit like Fame. There were dancers and this and musicians. Over the winter, I got my first sponsor. So I came back, and the local news had done a little piece. You know how regional TV they'll talk about cat up a tree, whatever. They talked about me. And there's me, hand on heart, saying, I'm going to be a race car driver. So I turned up the first day, and this tutor, she just ripped me apart. And she said, you're going to go and see the dean. And so I go there, and it gets shown into his office, and he tells her to wait outside. And he looks at me and he goes, so I hear you want to be a race car driver. I said, yeah, I do. And he went, well, who the hell wants to be a related artist anyway? He said, listen, we've got 86 girls on your course and only 4 boys. Please stay. Just, you don't have to do anything. Just hang out for the next year. So that's where my art career disappeared really quickly. And to be honest, I was never as good as my imagination. I knew there would be a place for me to use my creativity, but it certainly wasn't in drawing or painting, but it was a big part of my life.
I mean, I guess the time just wasn't right. I think that's, again, why we're sitting here right now, is because obviously something happened along the way. And it's funny that we link on that, because it was kind of a similar story. I didn't have the family. My father was a dentist. So it's like, of course, I didn't want to be a dentist. Who wants to look in people's mouths for a living? But I was into the arts, and it didn't go anywhere. But years later, I think I always had that love for photography. So did you look at images growing up? I mean, I'm sure there was no shortages of images that you had of your father. Your father obviously being an inspiring figure, and you're probably looking at some beautiful race photography growing up. Did that have any impact on you at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I think part of it was, when you're involved in something you might so closely from a child, you don't really appreciate the environment totally that you're in. You don't appreciate the moments as much. But certainly we were surrounded. My dad was involved, Derek was involved with the making of the movie Le Mans with Steve McQueen. So we have all these amazing black and whites that the set photographer at the end of the shoot, when they wrapped, just put them all over tables and said, take what you want. So we have all these amazing pictures of Dad standing with Steve, and me on my tricycle next to my dad's Ferrari with Steve McQueen next to. I mean, really amazing photographs. And I think those ones, I didn't realize the icon that Steve McQueen would start to become, but seeing that sort of, it was set in France at Le Mans, very moody photographs, I really enjoyed. And then, when you're racing, you're looking for pictures of yourself. You're like, oh, am I in the magazines? Am I in the paper? It's like trying to judge how you're doing. Pre-social media, unfortunately. And so I think it was a layer to my life that I didn't really grasp hold of until I was probably in my 30s. And then you'd see someone shot or something, and I got at the time I had an old Nikon, and I was like, it was pretty disastrous. I wasn't great with it, and I wasn't really trying. So I'd snap a shot and go, why doesn't that look like the guys at the track? And I realized that car photography and racing photography, sports photography, those guys are masters. They really are. People think they can do it, but there's a big difference, and I can talk about a couple of my favorites later. But it was when I moved out of to the latter stage of my career, I knew there was something I wanted to do with art. Creativity wise, and I think I'd found my place making shows. I transitioned to TV, and I was writing shows and making shows and being a part of it, and the production flow, if you like, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed doing that. Started a website called Motor Guru that failed, but it was great because I learned to edit. Because we ran out of money, I learned to edit. I'm like, God, I saw the guy do this. Can't be that hard. As I worked out, once again, it's hard, but I could do the basics. And so I knew there was something. And I tell you, there was a funny moment. I'm like, I'm going to start painting. So I went to art store, came back with this massive canvas, went in the garage, bought all these paints, and about 2 hours later realized that my talent hadn't grown with the time. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I and not long before I'd seen someone walking around with an old Hasselblad, and I thought, God, that's the most beautiful camera I've ever seen. So I went to the store, found one on eBay and bought it, and we didn't know anything about anything. And so, 1 in 10 shots kind of came out, but I was so excited about it. And then I saw someone with a Leica, and the light bulb went off. And that's when this all started about 10 years ago. Yeah, just crazy.
Well, I mean, it's funny. You Leica has this storied tradition among journalists, and a lot of the images that we loved from, the mid 20th century are Leica images, and you don't attach Leica to it, but it just has it's this iconic brand steeped in tradition. Now, were these around? What were they? Or did you even pay attention to what kind of cameras they were using when you were in the racing circuit? Was that even a thing, or was it?
Well, yeah, well, it getting quite interesting because, obviously in the DSLR world, the massive lenses and all that, that's what you use at a racetrack, right? The sponsors, the photographers have this brief to get, the sponsors down the side of the car, through the trees with the action shots. And I always looked at those poor guys walking down the pit lane, it's pissing with rain, and they've got cameras and 5 different lenses, and they look like a lightning rod about to be struck, and I thought, God, that looks uncomfortable. So I think when I first saw my first, M10, I was like, oh God, that's got to be the best thing in the world. I mean, at that point, I didn't totally appreciate the sort of the horses for courses kind of things. They needed those cameras. But then I would always look down and I'd see what they're carrying with them, and in the racing world, a lot of the guys were carrying a smaller camera as well to use. And I have a great friend, Ed Justice, and he's been around racing for a long time. Ed Justice Jr. has a great page on Instagram, does a lot with Leica. He has his big cameras. He has an SL2, and he's also shot with everything else. But he has his I think it's an M11 now, but he has an M10 or his Q2 with him the whole time. So I saw that there was a sort of duality to it, and that's when it really appealed to me, I got to say.
Yeah. What are you shooting with now?
So, it started with an MP because I wanted to do the film thing, and that really helped me evolve, my film photography. And then when the M10 came out, I just was that's exactly what I needed in my life. Because I was glad I had the film experience. I really was there because I could.
It makes you appreciate everything so much more, right? especially manually focusing.
I loved it. I love doing that. And I love the M10 for the fact that it had all the best bits of my film camera, plus the fact that I could see what I just shot, right? And I could just review it, but I still take photographs a bit like a film photographer does, as in shooting film, worrying about how many shots I have. I don't take a lot of photographs, as in I wouldn't take 100 of one scene, whereas I think in sports photography, they take thousands, right? I mean, I know some photographers, they have 10,000 photographs to go through at the end of a race weekend. And, I get stressed over.
Who wants to do that? I know.
So I used the M10, and then thanks to some encouragement from Richard, I got the SL2, and with the 50 and the new 28 lens, and I love it. I love it. I really, that's sort of, I've worked out. It took me a while to get my brain around how to use it properly and try and set it up the way I like to take photographs, because as I said, I don't just spray and shoot. I kind of wanted to keep the same vibe. And so that's become, and I'm still learning. I mean, I'm so naive to it really, but, and then I got the Reporter the other day, the Q2 Reporter, which I just love. I didn't know I loved the Q2 so much, because you could just like keep it there and just snap away. And so I'm now, combining the two, the SL2 with the Q2. I think when I'll give you an example. I was shooting Jackie Stewart, Sir Jackie Stewart, one of the most famous drivers ever. And I was doing my interview with him. And I didn't have the SL2. I didn't have the Q2 at that point. I only had the SL2, and he's showing me around his estate, and we're actually like in his bathroom looking at amazing pictures on the wall of him with Prince Albert of Monaco and Sterling Moss. And of course, that would have been great, right? Because I could have just like held it here and shot away. Whereas the SL2 is, was not right for that environment.
Mhm.
So now I have both. I'm very excited. But yeah, so, I guess to answer your question, the racing side of things, seeing what people, did, I just want to go back to that, seeing these amazing photographers around me actually has been very encouraging for me. There's, Ed Justice, as I said, there's another guy called Camden Thrasher who's on Instagram, who's probably one of the best photographers he's not even he's a motorsport photographer, but he does planes, he does things. He when you see someone who understands light so well that you go, how do they take that picture in that moment? How do they see that? And then another guy called Jamie Price, who is just spectacular. So I've got these guys on hand. I'm quite lucky to be able to ask advice, even if it's about workflow or this or that. It's, for not being in the photography world, I've got a pretty good circle of people that really are around. So I love that.
That's great. Yeah, I guess you can consider them good influences or bad influences, depending on, they got you breaking out the credit card to get into some, some purchases there. But it's good to have people around. It's funny, again, we share that similarity, that Richard was my gateway drug as well. And he said, he asked, he's like, have you ever used one? I'm like, you know what? I actually haven't. So he got my hands on an SL2, and I'm going to leave it at this. I completely understand what you say when you're talking about the images. It's you can't describe it. There's just something, there's a je ne sais quoi that when you press the shutter and you look through and see what the image that comes out on the other side is, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's art. And I think
something there, right? It makes you feel, I think, I'm going to use this disclaimer now. On behalf of all of you, real photographers out there, and photography aficionados, I think I prove the point that you can do this from a point of passion, not a point of lifelong technical understanding. And, my message to anyone, like my friends, my daughter's 15, Tallulah, and she's loving photography now. And we're all a bit the same. I'm a race car driver, not a race car engineer. You can give me the car and I'll race it fast and win races. I do not know how to make it go fast. I'm not the engineer. So I'm just a natural person at what I do. So I read, thanks to social media, right, and the internet, you can get such great advice from people. You can read their blogs or read things, and you pick up a little bit from everywhere. And I think it was the best advice I got was, don't get swamped by the technical side of things. You're dealing with the best cameras in the world. Build up to learning more and more, but just find, follow the light. Look at what you want. I mean, I do love shooting in black and white, so most of the time my cameras are set, to the monochrome setting, just so I can compose that way. It's like I prefer composing in black and white. And sometimes I can read the blogs, and I'm sure you have people on here that they're so knowledgeable technically. It actually, for me, takes the joy out of it, because I love my iPhone, but I just don't want to know how it works.
I'm the same way. You
enjoy it.
It's like, hand me a car, I'm going to get behind the wheel, and hand me a camera and set it up, and I'll set it as easy as I need to just get out there. And I think that comes through in your images, that there's more personality. That was one of the first things that jumped out about your images when I looked at them, was when you're thinking race car photography, what are you thinking? Slow shutter, dragging the shutter, pan shots of cars, and everything's car heavy. But there's such a human aspect to your work. And I think that's what sets it apart from most racing photography is the personality. And you really get to see behind, because we don't normally, when we see the drivers, it's, what do we get to see? Their eyes. It's like a 400 millimeter view looking through the window, and they're all harnessed in, and you just see this much of them. And it's like, we really get to see beyond what goes on the track. And I think that's beautiful about your images, Justin. Have you always been interested in that dynamic? I mean, do people interest you to that level?
Much more than cars. I always say that I mean, I started with my partner, Jason Jacobson, and Tommy Kendall, who's a Hall of Fame, very accomplished American driver. We started the Talk Show, which was, I always wanted a chat show. I'd been doing, it was on Speed Channel, and then it went to Fox Sports, and then it went to NBC, and I went NBC Sports, and I was doing the broadcasting all over the world for the TV and live from the pit lane, and I loved it. That's why I was so involved with the drivers, and I'd see it. And my skill was in talking to people and them sharing. And I don't know about you, but in my personal life, I'm not the world's best listener, but on camera, I'm really good listener. It's like I'm Jekyll and Hyde. You know, people go, oh, you don't listen to us like this. But I really do enjoy the personality side and the people side. So I've tried to take pictures of cars, and obviously you get the odd one that you like, but to be honest, it doesn't interest me. I just like taking the people around the cars, and going to a racetrack now, like, I mean, when Camden and Jamie go, they have to, they're there for their clients and they have to shoot. Ed is a little more open with what he has to do, and so he can shoot more about what he wants. When I'm there, when I go off air or our show's finished, I just take off my camera to go in the pits and catch the guys while they're waiting to get in the car, or they just get out, and you see all the sweat and you see everything. That's gold to me. I love those moments.
I love that. That's the in between stuff. It's the behind the scenes, the in between. It's the moments that happen between the big moments that get forgotten.
Yeah, it's funny. I wonder your point of view on this is because, I've also tried when I'm at the track now, it's lovely when you have that shallow depth of field and you get it, and it's kind of what we're all into right now. But when you look at some of the famous photographs of the past, right, whether it's news photography and Kennedy getting shot and everyone around him, or Oswald or whatever, you get used to the news photographers are there. If they'd shot, shallow depth of field, we wouldn't have seen who was behind them. We'd have just seen the focus. We'd have lost all that history. And, like whether it was Jesse Alexander or Bernard Caillet, who were amazing photographers in racing, they took it, everybody was in the shot, and we use them as historical references. Now you go, oh my God, actually there's a picture over there hidden behind the other one of a drivers meeting at Laguna Seca in 1962 and 68. And every driver you've ever heard of who's famous is in it. They're hanging out, they're smoking, they're talking, they're doing this. If we'd shot it like it's kind of trendy now, you'd have had one guy in shot and everyone else would have been, blurred. And so when I go to the track, I really try and remember that, because as sometimes it's nice to get what's happening in the background as well as what's happening in, at the focal point. So, I'm experimenting. It's a fun way of doing it.
That's a great point. I think we talk about that, especially when you get into your Leica shooters. Your Leica shooters like to shoot with that very shallow depth of field and have that, because it showcases that sharpness, that beautiful fall off.
But and so do I, by the way. I do a lot of my portraits are that way, but yeah.
But there is something to be said for that other side of things, where you have that rich, deep depth of field. And I think that's one of the things, to be honest, that I love in looking back at old photos, is looking at the people who are not the subjects. You have a photo from an event. Look at the people who aren't the subjects, see how they're acting, see what they're doing. I think you learn so much more. I mean, these photos are historical points along a timeline, right? We look back and we can gauge so much information from them. And I think that's really the power. It's the power to remember. It's the power to go back and experience these things long after they're in the past. And I think that's the beauty of, like you said, having everybody, having that depth of field where you can see everybody, you can see the environment. There's nothing worse than looking at an old picture and you're like, I don't remember where this was or who was there, what was going on.
Well, especially as in the world of racing's become very interesting now, because in the historic car market, race cars have just become wildly valuable. Ex-Le Mans cars, it's Indy cars, cars that have won this Tug of Florio, or really it adds such provenance to what they do that these cars are worth tens of millions of dollars. The way that the restorers know what to put on the car when they do a full restoration is from the photographs. and they can tell what sticker was on the car, where the graphics were, whether it was hand painted or whether it was when it got more modern into vinyl. I mean, think about all that anthropology effectively that is lost if we'd shot it Instagram style. You know, it would have just been, well, there's the guy's hands, that's it. So I know they use all these historic photographs as it is anthropology. You know, they're putting the past together through these images, and so I find them quite fascinating. It really is. Of course, it's still much more fun half the time when you're doing a good portrait, and the Leica lens really does. It just, that crispness, I think, you know, I think one of the shots you're going to show, you know, that Magnus is just so, it's so crisp, and it wouldn't have been the same if I had a wider lens.
You know what? You know, let's look at some images real quick. Let me pull up my old share screen there. We're gonna start with an image of the man himself right there.
There
in the driver's seat.
So that photograph was actually, she's very proud to say it. My girlfriend, Milani, she's on Instagram as the Shoot Sushi. She actually was a photographer at college, and now shoots horses. She's a farrier, so she has a very different life. But she took this one using my SL2 when I was driving the new McLaren, I think it was a 600 LT or something at Thermal at the racetrack. So she took, I said, I need a photograph. So the best picture out of that camera actually has probably been taken by her. But
I love it. And you know what I love about this is it's about you. And I love that. I think so many people, you put the car, it doesn't matter who you're putting the car next to. It could be the most famous race car driver in the world, and everyone wants the car in it. It's all about car. It's like we said, it's like the driver gets lost in all of this. The car doesn't do anything without the driver. I think it's similar, so similar to the camera in that sense, where, you know, it's all about who's behind the camera. It doesn't matter what technology you have in your hands.
Yeah. No, I was really pleased. So this is an interesting one. No, actually, no one has seen this until today. Parnelli Jones is arguably one of the most famous American race car drivers, and he is getting on now. He's definitely on his last lap, unfortunately, last couple of laps. And through a friend of his, I was able to go and sit with him, and I did one of the interviews for Life with Legends. We should probably explain what that is. And I took all these pictures of him, and then he was holding his Indy 500 trophy, and I thought, do you know what? I don't want to see one of the legends of our sport, who was such a handsome, strong man. I don't want to show his face. You know, I just don't want him to, as a print that I'm going to put out there. So I thought his wonderful hands and his the trophy was all I needed. So yeah, I isolated it down to that.
I think there's a beautiful humility in that as well, where again, we keep talking about this interspersing of the Instagram world and the effect of Instagram on photography and on the images that we choose to share. And I think capturing the hands of somebody who's so iconic without their face, how many people they're so quick to say, well, I know this person, I took a picture of this person, and I hung out with this person, and it's all about selfies and self-gratification. I think there's something so beautiful and humbling, and those people who, you know, who know racing are going to look at this picture and they'll know, or they'll have an idea of who's holding this trophy.
Thank you. Yeah, it meant a lot. And this one, totally different hands. A great friend of mine, Magnus Walker, who has become very much an icon in the world of collector cars and Porsches. He's in downtown LA. Fellow Brit, made his way over here and into the fashion industry, and now has an amazing stable of cars. He did a great documentary called Urban Outlaw that really put him on the map. So Magnus and I have had a long friendship. In fact, I took a picture of him and his wife before she passed with my Hasselblad, actually, and then he put that in his book. He did a book because she unfortunately passed away, and he used that as the picture of them, which was a real honor. So I was interviewing Magnus for the show, and I just thought I'd do something different. So yeah, I really like his great tattoos and stuff. I like this picture a lot.
And now, how are you with posing people? Do you like to keep it natural? Is it something that you struggle with?
I think it's probably the thing that I can learn the most from other photographers. Remember, I've never worked with a photographer. I've never apprenticed. I've never stood next to someone. So sometimes I'll try and find videos on how people work with their subjects, not one of those silly tutorials, but, I might see some behind the scenes. Or I'll talk to photographers. And I've also been posed for photographs, by some good photographers for, as a race driver. And I didn't realize it at the time, but people's confidence in telling you what they want you to do is the key, right? If I show nervousness as the photographer, it's going to go straight into my subject. So the good thing is Magnus has a lot of pictures taken of him, and it actually just worked out. He just did this himself. I said, let's play around with the hat, and I actually have one which is on my wall here that I'm giving him, where the hat's covering the whole of his face. But I've just printed one out for him for his wall. But I do think learning to pose people with confidence is very important, and that's a skill that I need to get better at. But especially with famous people, it's like Jackie Stewart's the biggest name in my sport, and I was, I really, on reflection, should have been bossier about what I wanted him to do, right? But I guess you learn.
Is it any easier for you? I mean, it's not like you're some average Joe walking down the street and you're walking up to Jackie Stewart. Doesn't where you've been and the family name and who you are, does that buy you any confidence when you're walking in front of somebody like Jackie Stewart?
Oh, 100%. It has done my whole life. It mainly, Life with Legends is my project, where I'm interviewing just one-on-one in person with my heroes. But it could be people connected to racing. So it's going to be actors, musicians, as well as drivers and people like Magnus. And because I'm one of them, because they're effectively my peer group, because I've done the same thing as they have, it allows us to have a much more intimate conversation. And we've kind of, I can ask questions that other people maybe can't, or come across better. But it helped me in business, with the business away from the racetrack, because I'd always think to myself as I went into a scary sponsorship meeting, or now getting deals for the show, for my talk show. I think one line goes through my mind: I can't die doing this. Whereas when I race cars, I could die doing it. Yeah. So when you've done something that you can die doing, you I guess telling someone to cross their legs or uncross them isn't such a big deal. So I have a confidence, I think, but I do need to get better at it. That's any comments welcome, by the way, anyone.
We're taking portrait tips now. We're going to open up the portrait tip line. We got, I think, 2 more images here. I love, there's something about this image. I love the framing of it. It just has like such a timeless quality. The light is beautiful.
Thank you. Now, this is a very emotional photograph. Alan de Cadenet was, unfortunately passed just a couple of months ago, and he was a swashbuckling man about town. He flew planes, raced motorbikes. He took raced his own car at Le Mans, flew biplanes, rode motorbikes, vintage motorbikes, just incredible. And anyone that knows him knows what a man he was. But he was a philatelist, a stamp collector as a kid. So he became obsessed with small detail, and the small detail then translated itself, as he said, when you're looking through a microscope at a stamp, looking for all these little details, you become very good at noticing things. He then went on, it's a funny story. He went to a party in London. He went with a beautiful girl, and there was a photographer had a party in the late 60s, and they're all there. And the photographer, with all these lights and stuff, stole his model girlfriend. So he's thinking, well, bugger that. So he went and bought a camera and became a photographer. So he was, next thing, he's amazing photographs he did stuff for Rolling Stones and magazine, and he's got beautiful portraits he's taken of people. He even shot Marilyn one time. So he has a collection of Leica from the beginning. I mean, as early as the cameras go. And this was in his Porsche 356, sitting in his driveway. And I just love the shot. And the interview is actually very touching and beautiful. But I gave him this shot. I printed it for him just before he passed, and it's just I'm very, very happy with it. It means a lot to me.
It does. You just made the hair on my arm stand up. And I think when it is such a beautiful shot that has the meaning behind it. I mean, this for me, like this is everything right now, talking to you and hearing the stories behind these. I think that really injects the true meaning and the emotion into an image like this. You can kind of tell in looking at it that it's a special moment, but to really hear it from your mouth and hear what was going on and what the stories behind it is just truly touching.
Thank you. This was with the SL2. And when this is why I think Leica is so crazy. When it's on my screen and I blow it up and you see the gray in his hair and things, there's a texture to it and a clarity that yet it's not that oversaturated. It's just something about the way Leica lenses do it. And I've got to say that I work with a guy called Bijan at Harmony Color. They're big printers in that's great. Yeah. In the Valley. And he's been in photography his whole life. And he'd never actually worked with it like getting prints ready, not developing them, but working with images to print for a client with Leica before. He hadn't done much. And he's constantly blown away by the detail that he can pull out of them. And when he goes to print it, it just has so much data in there, so to speak, that I can print it whatever size I want. It's quite amazing.
It is. And I zoomed it in just to show that. And I don't even think you can still fully grasp it. I've had my hands on a lot of cameras in my life. I've had some really, really, really great cameras, some medium format, large format, digital, film, you name it. The images that I took in taking the SL2 for a test drive, they're insane. I don't even have a word. When you're sitting there describing it, Justin, I'm smiling to myself because I'm like, I get it, and anybody else who is taking images gets it, but it's like you can't really put it into words. There's just a non-clinical, beautiful crispness to the. I don't even want to say sharpness, because when you think sharp, you think like overly processed, and it's just a classic crispness to the images. There's just something about them.
Yeah, really. Anyway, I love it. And of course, he has all these old cameras, and his son Aiden is picking up the mantle now, and he loves photography just as much. So I'm sure all these old cameras will be put to good use. And that's the wonderful thing, I think, in today's world, is we have an approach of a mentality, a psychology of disposability, don't we? I'm buying it. I'm buying this new iMac, which I'm on right now. Costs a lot of money that I know I'm going to junk in 4 years. And then I've got my old one over here, and I'm going to be that's going now. And, I looked online, it's worth $80. That's thousands of dollars 5 years ago. So the one thing that I think about Nikon, not against the other brands like Nikons and things, is while those cameras are incredibly good tools to get amazing images for a purpose, I don't think of them as legacy, family heritage items. They're not things you're going to pass down to your kids. And my kids are already earmarking what they the cameras they want. So I hope they don't know anything I don't about my health. But do you know what I'm saying? I think
it's like the difference in passing your camera to their kids. Yeah, it's like you pass most cameras you pass down to your kids when you're done with it in a couple of years, when you get a new one, so that they can learn on it or just tool around with it. But these are something you keep for a lifetime, and then you pass down as like an heirloom.
Yeah, an heirloom. Sorry, that was the word I was looking for. Yeah, I love it. So thank you for showing this one. I love it.
No, it's beautiful, beautiful image in our last image here.
Yes. So this is Stefan Johansson. Stefan he raced for Ferrari in Formula One. He raced for McLaren. He's a Swedish driver. He was fearless, very brave, very handsome, devastating with the women. He was, just a really great guy. Talk about transitioning to other passions during your life. He was the interview was very lovely for me. And actually, I regret not asking him, more. But he painted this picture. He painted these paintings before he started painting when his best friend, he tried to pull him out of the car and he burnt to death. And so in his grief, he started painting as a way of, expressing himself. And now that portrait behind, the painting behind, is actually, this was in his studio. That's obviously James Dean behind. But he was just standing there, and we just finished the interview, and I was like, he said, so where do you want to do the picture? And I said, oh my God, your mural behind you is effectively a halo. And so I just took his portrait in front of that. And he's got a studio, the coolest studio in Santa Monica. And there you have a guy who raced for a living extremely successfully. And his sole passion now is creating these large scale pieces of art. And he also does watches, he does all sorts of things. He's very, very talented. But anyway, I was very pleased to get this shot of him. And, he's also a guy that laughs a lot. So I quite like getting, if someone's known as a laugher, it's quite nice to get them not laughing. And if they're known as being really serious, you try and get crack a laugh. I just think I want to not show everybody the way that they are perceived to be all the time.
I think that's a great approach to portraits. It's kind of, you throw something out there because you instantly differentiate from anything else that they've done or the way that they're usually shown. Justin, we did have a question come in from one of our viewers asking if you prefer the SL or a more compact camera like the Q2.
That is, I think, a great question, because I mean,
difficult question.
It's a difficult question. I actually think it's slightly environmental. For me, like I mentioned earlier, I will definitely use the Q2 as I went to Pebble Beach with it, and Milani and we shot with it the whole time, got some great shots, went to the Getty last weekend. It's the right camera for that, right? You carry it around. I loved carrying my M10 around, but, unlike, there's people I've been around here in LA. I wish I could remember his name, but my great friend, Varone, who's a very good photographer, uses Q2 the whole time. He introduced me to a whole group of guys connected with the Leica store here in LA. And we were at an event at the Peterson Car Museum. And one of the guys, he is the fastest zone, focus almost anywhere. He's known for it. I mean, the guy, he would just do it, nail it on the spot. It was uncanny and kind of depressing at the same time. I struggle with that it's all in today's world, as no one stands still. They're all doing this bullshit Instagram, like, look at me move, look at me move, look at me move. And you're like, can you just stop moving for a minute? So I hesitate to say that I think my best photographs are with my M10 in the right environment. But, I'm 54, and my eyes right now, I can read the menu across the street. I have extraordinary vision. But from this distance, when you look at the back of the camera, unless my eyes against it, and then it's perfect, through the lens, the eyepiece, I don't want to miss the moment.
You don't know if that trust is there.
That trust, and I got pretty good with it, and then you go, I didn't quite get that, and I'm very privileged because I get into really maybe environments that I shouldn't do with, as a photographer, I don't deserve to be in the places I am. I'm only there because of my, who I am in racing. And so I'm like, God, I don't want to mess that shot up. So the Q2, I think, will be the perfect, partner for me in that. But I really enjoy the SL2 lenses, and the autofocus on that. And as I say, I'm just experimenting with, the combination of everything, trying to get it to take pictures like I do with my M10. That's my kind of goal from it. So your answer is I'm probably going to be SL2 and Q2 for the moment, because I think that's the way to go.
So hovering, and I do want to take. Go for it.
Just saying, you just reminded me of there's a reason for this as well. So talk about being in the wrong, ahead of my time. I went to Le Mans. So this is 6 years ago now. When maybe 7 years, 5 years ago, when I had the Hasselblad, and I was at Le Mans doing the live TV, and Tom Christensen, who's a great friend of mine, he's the winningest driver at Le Mans. 9 times he's won the Le Mans 24 hours, which is a lot. And I said to him, "Hey Tom, I didn't know he was retiring, but I said to him, can I go to, can we take a picture on the start line?" So on the Wednesday morning, portrait just for me, he was in his race suit and he sneaked down so the fans wouldn't see him as he gets mobbed. And I got him doing a yoga pose, basically like, cross-legged on the start finish line, just with 50,000 people in the stands.
That's
it was just
awesome.
It was kind of crazy. And I took the shot, and he's PR person's like, gotta go. And so he runs off, and I go, "Why is that bag sitting over there? Why did I put that bag on the top of my bag? Why didn't I get that back out?" And I just look down, and you just go, and that sweat starts to run down your face. You go, "I didn't have film in it," because I just didn't have film in it. And that's an amateur mistake, right? And later he's like, "I can't wait to see the shot. I'm announcing I'm retiring. You took the last photograph of me." I'm going, shoot. So anyway, I then go to the press room, and I'm telling some of my photography friends, and they go, "Yeah, we've all done that. Not normally with the most famous living driver, current driver in the world. Normally we do it when we're shooting, a craft fair, because we're cutting our teeth. But so I guess there's an upside and a downside to my access. I definitely learned from that. I should have used my iPhone too. At least I'd have had the shot. But that's where the Q2, all honesty, right? I mean, it's like if I was shooting between the M10 and this, rattle off a couple of shots of this as well, because at least I'm this sharp.
My heart pains for you. I mean, I've had plenty of those moments, but I don't think any of them were in that circumstance. What did I miss? Like a shot of like a dog walking across the street or something. It wasn't anything of that stature.
No, it was, but I think that's all what makes you appreciate the art and the craft.
It's like the excitement, the thrill of you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get it. I think that's the beauty that kind of lures these masochists into film photography, is they just want to.
So what do you think about it? I mean, you talk to so many people. How many photographers do you think still, if they did film at any point, still occasionally just load a film and just roll and just go and do it just to
feel alive again, just to reconnect? You know what? I think I honestly feel like film is for, you have your purists, you have like a niche group of purists, and you have your people who they start in film because they really want to. If you're going to start something, what are you going to start at? You're going to start at the most primitive analog version of it. Yeah. But I think I talked to a lot of professional photographers who are super accomplished. I mean, interviewed National Geographic photographers that for decades shot film in circumstances that I can't even imagine. And what do they all say? "Oh, I'd love digital. Why would I go back? It's cheaper. I can rack off 2,000 shots in a couple minutes. I can't do that with film, and it's all free."
That I think is the biggest thing, isn't it? Because I put some film in my MP, I don't know, Christmas time. Oh, this is fun. Oh, snap. And then you go, $30 by the time I've worked out it's 30, and then you go, and actually they just weren't as good. I mean, the couple were. And so I think it has its place, and I understand why people want to be purist about it. But for me, that's why I think Leica allows you to have that one foot in the past, and rooted in really the organic nature, the tactile nature of photography, as well as the latest that technology can bring you. And I enjoy that. Even here on the Q2, it's like taking all, we call them nanny aids on cars. When I go to a racetrack, and if I took a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever, I'm doing a test event, a test drive in it, I have to turn off the systems for me to be able to experience the car fully. Now, there are cars, McLarens and things, where you want the aids are better than us. Autofocus is better than me, right? It's always going to be.
Yeah.
So why would you ever turn that off? That's it. That just seems stupid. So, but it's trying to find the balance. You minimize your traction control. You minimize your,
Interesting. You want to feel the road. You want to be connected. I want to
feel the car slide. I actually need the car. I'm good enough to control a slide, so I want it to do that. Whereas, there are a lot of people, they don't, the manufacturers don't want you to slide the car. The systems, all the yaw control and everything will start to take over, but because it's trying to save you, and it's trying to save the average person from having an accident. When you're on a racetrack, that slows you down. So I need to have it on the minimum. And even in Formula One, they're always trying to dial this stuff back to the minimum. It's a very fine threshold. And I think that's what photography is like. I want to use the technology to the utmost, but still do it my way, trying to have a little bit of the adrenaline buzz that, I still contributed to the shot. I didn't just push the trigger.
It's such a great analogy, because there's enough of that tactile response. And let's face it, a lot of people shoot film because they like the look. They can preach about how romantic the process is. No, you like the look. You love that beautiful filmic quality to it. And I think it's like what you touched upon with the Leica, that it gives you that look.
Yeah.
And just as a plug, I know Richard will love this. Leica is doing a promotion, a family and friends promotion. We're going to drop the link in there for anybody interested. There's a family and friends on the SL system. So we have the SL system, the SL2, the SL2S. As if we haven't harped about it enough on this broadcast about how great it is. Definitely, if you guys haven't, I challenge you to go out there and borrow one, rent one, get your hands on something. You have to experience it, right? It's like going to the racetrack, and you can drive a go-kart all you want, but go down to the track one day and get in a fast car and go.
And people obviously, if you buy Leica, you're obviously relatively privileged to be able to afford to buy it. That's why this offer sounds really good. But the thing to remember is every other electronic you buy is disposable. They have a life on them that will not. People are always like, do you want the M11? Do you want this? Whatever's coming next. And I have an M10. However good they make it, I really don't need to upgrade from the M10, right? I mean, for the kind of photography I do, I'm sure they get better and the bigger sensors and everything. But I personally don't need to upgrade on that one. I will look at other cameras that they do. So I think people just maybe as a mindset, treat yourself, work it out. Work it out. If you could get your hands on one, you're not going to be changing it out. That's what I meant by what
totally. I think that's a great point. And it's such a parallel between the race car and the Leica camera, where you have this race cars that go on and they increase in value, and they keep their value, and they hold collector's value. And you can go on any second, eBay, anything marketplace where they're selling secondhand, and it's like a Leica. You're looking at the prices of some of these Leicas that have been around for years, and it's like they're more expensive. They hold their value better than anything else.
The lenses. Old lenses. You go, I'm going to find a good deal, and you go, whoa, actually, this. But I do want to say, about what really has brought this home to me about the package of what I'm doing is Life with Legends came about because I do all these interviews for TV and the live TV. And on live TV, you'll have someone super famous to talk to. Patrick Dempsey's at Le Mans with his racing team, and they're like, you got 45 seconds, 2 questions. I go, 2 questions? What am I going to do in 45 seconds? I can just about say my name in that. So I'm used to this, you just get somewhere and you have to bail. And they're like, oh, there's a crash, and in your ear, and you say, I'll be back to you. So it's very unfulfilling. And then on the talk show, we were talking to all these people at the IMSA sports car races, and we host Pebble Beach. We just did that. We're hosting a big event in Chattanooga in October, which is going to be amazing, a motor car festival. We're live stream experts, which we really enjoy live events and talking about it. And we have more time, obviously, because we produce it like a TV show, live race event. So it's, a great sort of flow to it. But you still want to go deeper. So, my dad and Jackie X, who I will be interviewing next summer when I go over for Le Mans, Jackie is one of the more 6 times. He's charismatic. He looks like a French movie star. He kind of was in a way. Belgian, very handsome guy. And he and my dad won 4 Le Mans together. So we were sitting at this little Hotel de France near. It's about 40 minutes from the track. It's where everyone stayed there since the 60s. And in the old days, they would drive the cars back at night. You know, they drove them back to the hotel and then drove them to track. I mean, kind of crazy when you think about it. Anyway, Dad and Jackie were just, you know, was 2 years ago. They sitting there 3 years ago talking over dinner about, you know, the girls and the this and and what the danger. And I thought, God, I wish I was recording this. That would be quite incredible. I thought, you know, I need to do these interviews. I need to be more insightful in these interviews. So at the beginning of the year, I thought I'm going to do this thing called Life with Legends, just the name I came up with. And, you know, unfortunately, as you know, we do all this by Zoom, but to do the interviews I do, I have to be with them. It's, you know, and especially these older people the older guys are timing out, you know. Unfortunately, you know, one of the people you just in the picture you've shown us already passed away. And, you know, there's others going to be following soon. So I've been really getting to it and doing it, and I coupled it with the portraits because I wanted, in the same moment that I've been in the same space of time that I've been doing the interview and the connection that we've made. That's why I wanted to do the portraits then of them, and that's where this series has come from. I did try and put it on Patreon, which was a great idea until I realized that that's a tough road.
Oh,
you know,
really?
I mean, people are subbed out, aren't they? Subscriptioned out. I mean, it's. I have a friend, Matt Farrow of Smoking Tire. He has 1 million people on his YouTube podcast, and he had 500 members on Patreon. And I thought that sums how hard it is.
Oh,
you know,
totally.
so I've just taken it down off that, and I'm relaunching on all podcast platforms right now. And the website is where I'm selling the pictures and doing that.
Oh, nice. And I will
24 prints. I'm doing it like Le Mans, 24 hours, 24. So everyone is signed, and so that's how I'm doing it.
Yeah, throw that out there, Justin. Where can people find all this stuff? Website, Instagram?
Just Life with Legends. Life with Legends. Yeah. And on Spotify, though, it's interesting because there are millions of podcasts. When you just launch, you might have to put Justin Bell as well, because you end up with the Legends thing, you know, fighting dragons and listening to people's, you know, sort of weird.
You'll end up with the Game of Thrones podcast.
Game of Thrones
podcast. Wait, where's Justin? This doesn't sound like him. Why does this guy have a Kansas accent?
No, exactly. No, but I really, you know, isn't it funny? With the photography thing, it just it makes you see the world in a different way. And, you know, I'm so simple about it. It's like I was telling my girlfriend just before we did it, you know, in no way am I going to pretend I know what I don't know, because I don't know much, but I just know what I think feels good. And thanks to the beauty and magic of Leica cameras, I'm able to maybe look better than I really am, but I love it.
I echo that sentiment. And I think one of the beautiful things about photography is for people like us who have always been interested in art, but God forbid I pick up a paintbrush or do anything with it. It's so time consuming, and it's hard, and you can't, it's hard to paint. It's hard to draw. It's hard to create something from nothing. And I think the beauty of photography is you don't have to create from nothing. It's already there. You just have to see it. Yeah. And you have the right tool that makes you feel comfortable, that makes you feel alive, that makes you want to go out and capture these things and share them with everybody else. And I think that's where the beauty lies in your work, because you can see it's personal. There's a quality to your work that evokes that emotion, and it's different. And that's initially when Richard and I were talking, it was like, this is it. This isn't what you see splattered all over Instagram. And this isn't just this here today, gone tomorrow trendy photography. These are meaningful moments. And in talking with you, Justin, and hearing the stories and hearing how the power of capturing somebody, especially somebody who has had a storied career and is on their final laps, that's where the true power of photography is, because those images will live forever, just like the camera you took them with. The images, you know, and that's the stories get passed on. And as long as we have an image to remember these things, and as long as there's somebody to talk about these, I mean, it's power. And that's what I love about photography. I can sense you're probably in the same camp.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's why it's funny, you know, interesting with the Instagram how we post pictures and how we use our iPhones. A great friend of mine, Jeff Swart, who he is, when I come back, I'd like to come back as him. You know, he's an amazing driver. He's won Pikes Peak. He's also one of the world's top directors and producers when it comes to car content, Super Bowl commercials, everything. Lives in Colorado, drives all these beautiful, very significant Porsches, and is a photographer and has done books about photography. But he is just as happy with his iPhone. I mean, he takes amazing photographs. I've talked to him about it. I am not there yet. You know, he's been to the top of the mountain and he can just enjoy the ride down. I hate taking pictures on my phone. My girlfriend Melanie, she's an amazing iPhone photographer. I bet I'll put the snaps up, right? Look at me, here's the kids, here's this. But I have Leica Racer, which is my main photography account, Leica Racer on Instagram, and because the Life with Legends one's just started. But that I only put pictures I take with my Leica on it, you know, and I curate them, and they mean something to me, and I think it shows. But you know, my Justin Bell TV is just whatever video, whatever comes up, because I don't, you know, I just don't care.
Puts you into a different frame of mind. Taking photos with a camera versus an iPhone, it resonates with me, because you don't go to you go someplace when you're looking through the viewfinder, you disappear. You're no longer standing there. You're in the moment. And the iPhone is just
no, it's brilliant, but it's just like too brilliant. I have no interest in it. But I think that's what I hope that's what's going to be good for you know, everybody. You know, the future of photography is that there's people like me, there's other racing drivers who have gravitated to photography because we're there in the moment. And the path is there's been some great predecessors. Phil Hill, who was America's only Formula One world champion, you know, he was an incredible racing driver. He always had a camera with him. So literally they've done exhibitions of his photography because he was there, you know, in the drivers meeting, and they're just kind of like turning around taking pictures of everybody because he was there. You and I wouldn't have been there. We would never have been allowed in. And so those intimate moments, and I try and think of that. I try and think, you know, people got so gun shy, didn't they, with social media? I think they look at the big cameras, and especially famous people, they think paparazzi, don't want anyone there, but that's going to be bad for me. Whereas when you sneak up with your little Leica, I mean, they let you get in, you know, your nostrils. I did a funny thing last year with Patrick Dempsey at Le Mans. He didn't know, I hadn't seen him yet, and he raced at Le Mans a few times. He was very accomplished at it, but he owns part of a team. So he goes with Porsche, and he was there, and he had his mask on, and especially the French photographers, or any of the photographers, when they see him, they, you know, everyone's very invasive to him, you know, because he is so famous. But generally at the racetrack, it settles down, and but I behind my camera, I got closer and closer and closer and closer, and basically I was like this close to him, right? And eventually he's like and then he just started laughing. But the series of pictures is quite, because you could, you know, that moment when you know someone's just caught the fact that they're having their picture taken, so they just kind of you know, they just like, you know, and he's a very handsome man, but I could just tell, you know, he just like, you know, the jaw went a bit stronger and all this. And then as I came closer, he was getting really annoyed. You know, I think with a big, you know, 400mm lens, I probably would have been shut out at the door, you know. But
of course, and there's an intimacy to the image just to getting up close. When you're taking images from a distance, you can tell the images aren't there's something in people's eyes when they know you're taking a picture of them and you're in close proximity that it really connects you to the image. I think that's it's
just great. And also I'm very excited on the Q2 to play with the macro. You know, it's like I'm always fascinated when you see people have taken those beautiful, really close-up portraits of like eyes and you know, and freckles and things, and I'm like, oh, I think I have the camera I can do that with.
When you have the ability to get the detail, it's hard not to.
It's I mean, it's my son said the other day, he said, Dad, what do you I was saying, he was saying something about collecting things because he loves collecting and anything. And I said, well, I think cameras are my thing now. And he went, oh, you think? You know, because I had them all laid out and there's lenses and this, and you know, I'm trying not to be like the guy who turns up at a club, again, a racing analogy. You know, there's a big club racing scene. You know, it's what supports the world of racing. Lots of, you know, guys who not always wealthy, but you know, people that have dreamt about driving on a racetrack, and they get a bit of cash together and they buy it. It could be a little Mazda Miata, it could be anything, but they, you know, you go to the track and you can have so much fun. However, there's the other side of it. There's the guy that turns up in a new, you know, GT3 Porsche. He's wearing his Pelotti race boots at breakfast, you know, with his niece in attendance, and he's got the latest helmet, $10,000 carbon fiber helmet, and he can't drive a stick up a dog's back. You know what I mean? And you go, so he looks the part because he's bought all the right stuff, right? But all the right gear, but he's crap. You don't want to be that guy. However, when it comes to Leicas, I'm okay. I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to have the best cameras because I think they're the best. So
be that guy. Richard's listening right now and he's like, oh, you want to collect? He's going to be calling you up. He's going to be telling you about the friends and family deal. He's going to have a couple more Leicas for you to add to the collection.
I'm good for the minute, Richard. Thank you so much. I really am. I got to get to master these, but yeah, just what a beautiful world. Really good.
Definitely. Look, did you have any doubt in your mind when we started this, Justin, that we would fill an hour?
Has it been an hour?
See,
wow.
Look at it. I know. I told you, you get the two of us in a room. It's like, who's going to shut up first?
I know. No, it's easy. No. Thank you so much. It's I'd love people to check out Leica Racer, you know, because I think there's some nice images on there.
Definitely. We're gonna drop that in the comments section. Definitely check out Leica Racer on Instagram, lifewithlegends.com. And see everything Justin has going on. Justin, this was awesome, man. I mean, I already knew it was going to be a great conversation. It's just
thank you so much. Yeah, it's a real honor. You know, I get to do a lot of interviews about also, you know, about my world, but never about photography. So this was probably the most excited I've been about doing a podcast in forever. So thank you.
That's great. Well, thank you, and a huge thank you again to Leica for making this happen. Next time I get out to LA, man, I'm gonna come hunting you down, and we're gonna go taking some street portraits.
Let's do that. Yeah, I'll take you. I'll show you a couple of secret collections car collections that'll blow your mind.
There we go. Well, Justin, huge thank you again. Of course, all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you check out Justin all over the expanses of the internet. Check out, he's doing some great stuff over there. Huge thank you again to Leica, our friend Richard. Special thank you to you. It's all we got for now. From Justin, Leica, and the rest of the B&H Event Space team, this is another edition of the B&H Virtual Event Space in the books. Catch y'all next time.